Life, nature, and God. Deeply, deeply profound subjects which humans have discussed for millennia and millennia. Why? Why do we decide to discover such things about ourselves? Because we're boring. So theology is one of those things that I wouldn't risk touching with a 10-foot pole, ideally, because you either end up looking like this.
All atheists in the world to unite in order to show them our wisdom.
Or looking like this. However, recently, the Instagram gods have flung my way a myriad of hashtags which I'm fascinated about and have to talk about. I can't be the only one who's seen an influx of witch posts and the general rise of witchcraft online. And my deep, deep, profound philosophical mind can't help but be fascinated. A few years ago, I have a confession. I was 12, which means you go through the phase every normal 12-year-old goes through, which is obviously a self-care phase. Maybe that was just a me thing. I mean, look at my room, look at my bathroom, filled with expensive smelling salts. So initially, I brushed this new phase off as just another branch of self-care. However, recently I've looked into it more deeply. And then this brought a myriad of other questions to mind, like, what even is the social role of religion? Why do we as humans choose to collectively worship a set of gods and follow a strict rule of belief? So I went to the holy grail of information, that being youtube.com, and watched 3 videos, which obviously means I'm an expert in what I'm talking about and can therefore lecture you about it. I propose you come with me on an exploration of the witchcraft community. So to get started, what is religion and what is its role in society? If you walk about 20 feet into any art gallery, you're likely to find a religious painting of some variety. That is, unless you're in one of those fucking weird art galleries or Tate Modern, where you're more likely to find sheep shit than Jesus. There's a joke there somewhere. It's undeniable that religion has played a massive role all throughout history, influencing everything from geopolitics to the personal lives of millions. It's so ubiquitous that it seems an immutable part of society, and there is merit to the idea. Defining the exact role of religion is incredibly difficult, because its influences are so vast and expansive. Knowing that, let's condense it into 3 easy, digestible sentences. Our journey for sociological understanding brings us to the daddy of all social sciences, confirmed soy boy and inventor of the girly sciences, Emil Durkheim. Durkheim talked a lot. Full stop. But he particularly talked a lot about religion. In sociology, there are multiple ways of coming up with theories, but I'm going to focus on one in particular, something called structural functionalism. Structural functionalism treats society as a cohesive whole that has individual parts that contribute to its ongoing functioning. Vague bullshit, I know. I find the example of a computer quite useful. Imagine if society was a PC, and each individual component represented a different part of society. Without one another, the computer as a whole wouldn't work. In this example, say religion is analogous to RAM, for example. It has specific roles and conducts specific functions. Durkheim suggested that the functions that religion conducts are as follows. 1. Establishes social cohesion around shared values. 2. Social control. And 3. Provides a sense of purpose. This is all kind of dry unless you use a relatable example. So I'm going to talk about the most important religious movement over the past 50 years. Gamers. Yes, I am going to dedicate my entire channel to dunking on gamers. And no, I'm not sorry. Okay, that sounded like a good idea while I was writing the script, but in retrospect, it's just going to confuse people, so let's just stick with Christianity. Christianity establishes cohesion around stuff like prayer, marriage, baptism, and communion, and it creates shared culture by valuing certain ideals, like justice, sin, and purity. Furthermore, Christianity forms the backbone to many people's social lives, and for most Americans, church is the most important social connection they have. Christianity imposes control on its practitioners internally and externally, which can get ugly, but we don't have time for that. The 10 Commandments are arguably the most direct set of rules that we have, unless they're incomplete.
Hear me! Oh, hear me! All pay heed! The Lord Jehovah, has given unto you these 10 commandments.
The sanction for disobedience comes from both the community and from yourself. If thou kills, thou probably won't be very popular with yourself, and probably won't be popular with many other people. Thirdly, the third theorem. Life kinda sucks. Unless you find a higher purpose in life, like myself, that being... you have to find a purpose to live, and religion packs that up nicely and serves it to you on a plate. If you follow the Christian's Guide to the Galaxy and obey these rules properly, your life is good and purposeful. That's a pretty attractive message. Hopefully you can see what the role of religion is in the functionalist perspective, but there are other ways to look at it. Feminist, racial, and queer theory are incredibly useful for seeing how society entrenches inequality, but we don't have time to complain about society today. We'll do that some other day. Today I'm talking about crystals, goddammit. I said earlier that religion was such a big part of society that it seemed immutable, but recent history is proving that wrong. There's a general movement towards secularism, a movement from society identifying with religious values to society identifying with secular values. If you want an example of secularization, look at Russia. Before the revolution, it was incredibly religious, but after the revolution, secular as fuck. All with just a click of the finger. And a few million deaths. And this isn't only a commie thing. I'm not sure if America's becoming more secular, but there's certainly a movement away from organized religion. Americans generally don't trust institutions, and are trusting them even less as time moves on, and the church is not exempt from that. According to this research institute, in 1975, 68% of Americans felt confident in organized religion. In 2019, that number reached an all-time low of 36%. The trend away from organized religion is supported by other sources too, which I'll link in the description. If I remember. If you're lucky. To look for some explanation for this, let's return to Durkheim's functions. Function 1 is to create social stability through shared norms, but I feel like in the 21st century, other aspects of our society are filling that function. This is all conjecture on my part, but maybe we're swapping religious tribalism with cultural tribalism. Maybe the politics we support, the country we belong to, and the media we like to consume is more important to us than religious norms. The role of the church has been replaced for some people by other communities. With the internet, you can connect to anyone who shares the same interests as you. So is connecting with people who share the same geographical location and God still that important? Maybe your answer to that is yes, and that's super hecking valid. But for lots of people, the answer is increasingly becoming no. Furthermore, the second function, it isn't doing too great in the 21st century. Turns out that shaming people over rules which were written 2,000 years ago and are sometimes questionable at best is slightly problematic. It's the woke police, nino, 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 nya, 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 nya. I'm going to be really sensitive here because people get very offended over things like this. But organized religion controlling what people eat, notions of virginity, who people can have sex with, and wait, what was the other one? And what they can say or believe. It's just, people just don't like it that much anymore. I'm sorry, 16th century. Thirdly, a sense of purpose. This one has me stuck. I have no idea how modern religion has failed at this one. So, the comments. So it's clear that Americans are less trusting of the church, but that doesn't mean that they're less spiritual. The majority of Americans still feel spiritual to some extent. However, there's now become a gap. There's a gap of people who still feel spiritually active, but feel distanced from organized religion. Maybe, some would argue, it's time to move on to a new religious movement, that's more individualistic and less discriminatory. Ladies, gentlemen, and those between and above, I present to you witchcraft.
The 23.
Welcome to the sensual witchcraft experience. This feels like a mukbang, but make it Satan. Excuse my red eyes, I've had a busy day of crying. Tomorrow's fully booked too. Witchcraft has been around for forever, and paganism's been around for even longer. Witchcraft's history is, interesting. It's marked by burnings, social exclusion, and sex toy broomsticks. You've probably heard of the term witch hunt. Salem witch trials, anyone? However, witchcraft rebranded in the 21st century, and is currently very, very popular on Instagram. I shit you not, every other Twitter catgirl person is some flavour of empowered female uwu witch, and honestly, I stand the living shit out of that. This new modern vibe of witchcraft is currently very trendy. However, witchcraft isn't a trend, it's a spiritual movement. When first writing this, I was so surrounded in the aesthetic uwu Instagram witchcraft that I perceived it more like a self-care hashtag rather than a spiritual movement. Not that I do self-care, because being happy is for girls, and fuck that. Side note, this can't just be a me thing, but I generally find it incredibly funny when someone insults someone for doing something girly. I'm like, hello? Like, what's the issue? Are you scared of women? Like, do you not like them? Hello? Witchcraft is a practice of magical skills, spells, and abilities. It's an incredibly broad term and is therefore incredibly difficult to precisely pin down. Witchcraft sometimes overlaps with a New Age religious movement called Wicca, which found its footing in a book published by this guy in 1954. I cannot pronounce his name. Explaining all of the complexities of Wicca and witchcraft would take hours and multiple videos, and I do not have the attention span for that. So I just want you to know the important things. Number 1. Wicca and witchcraft both use magic, usually in the form of casting spells, hexes, and enchantments. Number 2. Both Wicca and witchcraft are highly individualistic. Yes, there are founding philosophies and texts that drive both movements, however the way individuals practice varies widely. In the past, Christians have been killing each other over the tiniest difference in biblical interpretation. But in Wicca, there is no Bible. There isn't even a singularly agreed on God. Witchcraft and Wicca allow you the flexibility of bringing your own deities into your practice. To me, the rise of Wicca and witchcraft make perfect sense, even though I, myself, don't personally believe in it. Let's return to the 3 functions of religion, which we previously said were being filled by other parts of our life, and see how Wicca may fill the gap perfectly. Wicca provides cohesion through its simple founding philosophy of and definitely provides a social community. If you want any proof of that, just scroll through Witch Talk. Most importantly, in my opinion, it circumvents organised religion's modern issues with overzealous social control by its flexibility, while still keeping the same quote-unquote good, for lack of a better word, parts of Western religion, by being tied to the simple, generally morally sound philosophy of do no harm. And just like with any other religion, it promises meaning and purpose in life, giving it the allure that makes religion so tempting in the first place. On top of that, there's something to say about how it's adapted to social media and multiculturalism. Rather than having to worry about controlling a centralised message, it has the advantage of being personalised in its very nature, making it perfectly adapted to social media. Furthermore, as far as I can see, the witchcraft community has embraced Native American and indigenous religious beliefs, furthering its reputation as inclusive. This leaves me wondering, are we seeing the death of churches, mosques, and temples as an institution? Is the future of spirituality more individualistic? The answer is super complicated very nuanced, and yes, it is. It is the future. Yes. That's right, yes. Yes. I'm actually really depressed. Which makes me sad, because despite their flaws, throughout history, churches have often been a force for good. I mean, essentially all the way up to the Victorian era, it was the only poverty net that people had. I mean, like, it was either you went to a church to look for help or you starved to death. I suspect that increasingly, people are either going to double down on their previously held religious beliefs, or they're going to adopt individualistic religion as it moves into the mainstream. However, only time will tell, and time tells me it's time to go to sleep. Okay, I have to end this video on some deep and prophetic and profound point. How's this one? Us humans are puzzled by religion. We are puzzled by ourselves, and we are puzzled by the world we live in. However, despite that, we can cling onto the one thing that unifies all religion and all of humanity. Candles are nice, and it's fun to burn them.